They didn't just break you. They dismantled you piece by piece, in front of an audience. You thought it was a single moment of failure, a misstep that could be forgotten. You were wrong. It was a public vivisection of your social worth, and they handed you the scalpel. She didn't just reject you. She orchestrated your irrelevance. She made you the punchline to a joke you didn't even know you were telling, and the silence that followed her laughter was the sound of your own social death. You stood there, a ghost in a room full of life, every pair of eyes a confirmation of your new status. Invisible. You became a memory of an embarrassment, a story people would tell to feel better about their own mediocre lives. You tried to speak, to reclaim the space you once occupied, but the words turned to ash in your mouth. Your presence had been nullified. You were less than nothing. You were a cautionary tale. This is the abyss of social powerlessness. It's a cold, silent vacuum where your value is dictated entirely by the perception of others, and their perception is one of contempt. You replay the moment in your mind, a relentless loop of your own undoing. The slight smirk on her face as you stumbled over your words. The way the crowd's quiet pity morphed into open ridicule. The glow of phone screens capturing your demise, immortalizing your weakness for the digital coliseum. You were not a man who made a mistake. You were the mistake itself. And in the days that followed, you felt the change. The averted gazes, the conversations that stopped when you approached, the invitations you never received. You weren't ostracized, you were simply deleted. It's a far crueler fate. To be hated is to be acknowledged. To be ignored is to be erased from existence. You learned the brutal truth that social capital is a currency, and you were bankrupt. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "That which is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil." But you discovered a more terrifying truth. That which is done out of social contempt happens squarely in the court of public opinion, where good and evil are merely tools to assign status. You weren't judged as evil for your failure. You were judged as bad in the most primitive sense. Weak, inept, unworthy of attention. You were relegated to the herd, the nameless mass that serves only to elevate others by comparison. You searched for answers in conventional wisdom, in the hollow advice of friends who told you to move on, or be yourself. But how can you move on from your own funeral? How can you be yourself when yourself has been declared worthless? These platitudes are poison for the defeated. They are the opiates of the herd, designed to keep you docile and accepting of your place at the bottom. It was in this utter darkness, this state of complete social negation, that you found him. Not as a philosopher for dusty academics, but as a strategist, a weaponsmith for the soul. You didn't find Nietzsche. You were cornered by his ideas. In the pages of Beyond Good and Evil, you found no comfort, no solace. You found a war manual. It wasn't a guide to healing. It was a blueprint for building a weapon out of your own shattered pieces. Nietzsche didn't offer you a hand to pull you up. He offered you a hammer to reshape your own reality. He taught you that the need for approval is a cage, and that true power lies not in being liked, but in being necessary, in being compelling, in being a force that cannot be ignored. He showed you that morality, social codes, and the very idea of goodness are often just sophisticated systems of control wielded by the weak to restrain the strong. You had been playing by their rules, and you had lost spectacularly. It was time to burn the rulebook. Before we dismantle the architecture of your old self and begin forging the first weapon from its ruins, I command you to take your first strategic action. Subscribe to Psychological Dominion. Activate all notifications, for the battlefield is ever-changing, and you cannot afford to miss a single dispatch. Strike the like button, not for my sake, but as a declaration of intent, a commitment to this war you are about to wage. And in the comments below, I want you to report your position. Tell us what city you are watching from, and share the one moment of humiliation you were told to forget, the one wound you were advised to hide. We are not here to heal it. We are here to weaponize it. Join the legion of men who refuse to be ghosts. You stood on the precipice, holding a book that felt less like paper and more like steel. It was a dark playbook, filled with tactics for a war you never knew you were fighting. The concepts weren't abstract philosophies, they were field-tested strategies. The will to power was no longer a theory. It was the raw, undeniable drive to impose your own reality onto the world, to stop being a reflection of others' judgments, and to become the source of judgment itself. The idea of the Übermensch, the Overman, was not some unattainable ideal. It was a tactical objective, a state of being so self-mastered, so internally validated, that the opinions of the herd become as meaningless as the buzzing of flies. This wasn't about becoming a better person. Good and evil were luxuries you could no longer afford. This was about becoming effective. This was about becoming powerful. The path forward was terrifying, for it required the death of the man you thought you were, the man who craved validation, the man who measured his worth by a woman's smile or a crowd's applause. To follow this path meant embracing what others would call your darkness. It meant cultivating an aura of calculated indifference, mastering the art of saying more with silence than others could with 1,000 words. It meant engineering an enigma, revealing so little of your inner world that others would be forced to fill the void with their own fascination, their own fear, their own respect. It was the art of becoming a black hole in a universe of dying stars, a presence so dense and powerful that it bends the light of everyone around it. You realize the ultimate power is not to be seen, but to be felt, a quiet force whose presence shifts the emotional gravity of any room he enters. The choice was laid bare before you, in the stark, unforgiving prose of a madman. Remain the ghost, a forgotten joke haunting the periphery of other people's lives, or use this knowledge to forge yourself into a new kind of man, a man whose silence is more commanding than any shout, whose stillness is more intimidating than any threat, a man who is no longer a player in their game, but the architect of his own. The question that hangs in the air, thick with the smell of sulfur and potential, is not if you can do it, but what kind of monster you are willing to become to ensure you are never, ever made to feel invisible again. Let us begin the autopsy. There will be no sentiment here, no condolences for your loss. Sympathy is a poison administered by the herd to keep its wounded members docile. What you require is a cold, forensic deconstruction of your own defeat. You did not simply fall from grace. You orchestrated a meticulous, step-by-step demolition of your own authority. You handed your enemies the blueprints, the tools, and the key to the gate. You must now walk through the rubble of your own making, not to mourn, but to learn the flawed architecture that led to its collapse. This is the strategic analysis of your undoing, the diagnosis of a self-inflicted wound. Nietzsche wrote of the last man, the creature who seeks only comfort and security, who has forgotten how to strive, how to overcome. You did not just become the last man, you volunteered for the role. The process of your castration was not a singular violent act. It was a slow erosion, a death by 1,000 concessions. It began not with a shout, but with a whisper. The first stage of your demise was the multi-emotional concession. It seemed harmless, even virtuous. She was upset, perhaps over something trivial. A comment you made, a plan that changed, an unmet expectation floating in her mind. The man you were, the man conditioned by a slave morality that prizes agreeableness over strength, saw her distress as a problem to be solved. Your mission, you thought, was to restore her happiness. And so, you yielded. You apologized when you were not wrong. You changed your stance to placate her. You abandoned a principle for the sake of a temporary peace. You thought you were being the good guy, a fatal miscalculation. In that moment, you taught her a powerful lesson. Her emotional state has dominion over your reality. You gave her a key, and she noted its power. She tested you. You yielded. She won. Nietzsche saw this instinct not as love, but as a symptom of weakness. The will to power turned inward, becoming a will to serve, a will to be subjugated. You did not solve a problem. You created a precedent. You established a chain of command where her feelings were your superior officer. From this single seed of surrender, the infection spread. This is the second phase, the loss of frame control. A man's frame is his reality, his set of principles, his boundaries, his non-negotiables. It is the sovereign territory of his mind. After your first concession, you began to cede territory willingly. Your world, once defined by your own ambitions and desires, began to shrink, reforming itself around the gravitational pull of her approval. It was the weekly game with your friends that you started to miss, because she'd sigh and say she was lonely. It was the passion project you stopped working on late at night because she made a passive-aggressive comment about the light keeping her awake. It was the opinion you softened in a debate because you saw the flicker of disapproval in her eyes. Each of these was a silent surrender. You were not compromising. You were retreating. Compromise happens between two sovereign nations. You were dissolving your own borders. You became reactive, a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the changing tides of her moods. You stopped being the architect of your life and became a nervous tenant, hoping not to displease the landlord. Your life, was no longer your own. It was a joint venture in which you held no voting shares. This loss of self-governance created a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushed the third and most addictive phase, the hunt for validation. Having outsourced the control of your reality, you now needed to outsource your sense of self-worth. Her approval became the drug you could not live without. You were no longer acting from a place of internal conviction, but from a desperate need for an external reward. You became a performer, and she was your one-woman audience. Her smile was a standing ovation. Her silence, a scathing review. You bought her things not from a place of genuine generosity, but as a tribute, a desperate offering to a capricious goddess, hoping for a sliver of her favor. You began to constantly ask for reassurance. Do you love me? Are we okay? Did I do the right thing? Each question was an admission of your own powerlessness. You were begging her to tell you who you were, what you were worth. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the overman, is a creator of his own values, a man whose validation is generated internally. You had become his polar opposite, a value consumer, a beggar in the marketplace of affection. You measured your worth not by your own deeds, but by the reflection you saw in her eyes. And because she controlled the reflection, she controlled you. This addiction to validation inevitably leads to the fourth stage, the most pathetic of all, emotional dependency. At this point, the line between your emotional state and hers has been completely erased. You are no longer two separate individuals. You are a host, and her mood is the parasite. If she has a bad day, you have a bad day. If she is anxious, you are consumed by her anxiety. You cannot relax if she is tense. You cannot feel joy if she is sad. You have become her emotional caretaker, a role you were never meant to fill. Your mind, which should be a fortress dedicated to your purpose, has become a field hospital for her feelings. You spend your energy trying to manage her state, to predict her reactions, to preempt her displeasure. This is the ultimate abdication of masculine energy. Your core function is to be the calm in the storm, the rock against which the waves of feminine emotion can crash and break. But you have abandoned your post. You have jumped into the water with her, and now you are both drowning. You have forgotten that your stability is your primary value. By becoming emotionally enmeshed with her, you have become just as volatile, just as unpredictable, and therefore utterly useless as a stabilizing force. You have become redundant, and all of this culminates in the final catastrophic act of self-immolation, breaking the silence. This is the moment of total surrender. Conflict arises. Perhaps she is testing you, withdrawing her affection, giving you the silent treatment. This is a tactic, a maneuver on the emotional battlefield designed to gauge your strength. Her silence is a weapon. It is designed to make you uncomfortable, to make you break, to make you reveal your hand. The powerful man meets this silence with his own. He remains unperturbed. He continues with his purpose. His stillness communicates that he cannot be emotionally manipulated. His frame is unshakable. He creates a vacuum with his own silence, forcing her to be the one to break it. But you did not do this. Her silence was a torment you could not bear. It was the withdrawal of the drug you had become addicted to, her validation. So you broke. You pursued her. You pleaded. Please, just talk to me. What's wrong? What did I do? You demanded to work things out, to communicate, believing that more words would solve a problem that was never about words. It was about power. When you begged her to speak, you screamed to the heavens that her voice held more authority than your peace. You confessed that her silence could shatter your reality. You poured out your insecurities, your fears, your frustrations, laying your entire emotional arsenal at her feet. You thought you were being open and vulnerable, another lie sold to you by a weak culture. You were not being vulnerable, you were exposing your throat. And when, in your desperation, you finally apologized for a crime you didn't even understand, you signed the official document of your surrender. You gave her the ultimate power, the power to grant you peace, a peace she can now give and take away at will. Before we engineer the weapons to reclaim your sovereignty, you must first acknowledge the full extent of your failed campaign. You must map the territory you have lost. What was the first harmless compromise you made that set this catastrophic chain of events in motion? Subscribe to Psychological Dominion now. Activate every notification, for this is a war of information, and you cannot afford to be uninformed. Strike the like button as a salute to the man you once were, and a declaration of war on the man you have become. And in the comments below, I want a battlefield report. Answer this question. What was the first boundary you allowed to be crossed? The one you dismissed as not a big deal? We are not here to absolve you. We are here to use these confessions as tactical data, to build a strategy from the ashes of your defeat. Now, I hear the objections sputtering in the back of your mind, the last gasps of the slave morality you have been force-fed since birth. But relationships are about compromise, you cry. You have mistaken abdication for compromise. Compromise is a negotiation between two sovereign entities, two powers who both bring value and hold firm to their core principles. What you engaged in was a rout. You gave up land, resources, and strategic positions without a single shot fired in return. Nietzsche would argue that the will to power is life itself. You voluntarily chose to stop living, to stop asserting your will upon the world, and instead allowed another's will to replace it. You cannot negotiate from a position of utter weakness. You must first rebuild your throne before you can negotiate treaties. But isn't this approach cold, unfeeling, even toxic? This is the most insidious lie of the herd. They conflate emotional discipline with emotional absence. They want you to be a chaotic mess of feelings because an emotionally incontinent man is an easily controlled man. This is not about becoming a heartless monster. The Übermensch feels more deeply, more profoundly than the last man, but he is not a slave to those feelings. He is their master. This is about cultivating an internal stillness, an unshakable core that is not thrown into chaos by external events. It is the discipline of a warrior who feels fear, but acts with courage regardless. Your emotions are yours. To allow someone else to play them like a fiddle is to give up the very essence of your manhood. True strength is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be defined and controlled by it. So, I'm just supposed to ignore her feelings? Another flawed premise. You are not to ignore them. You are to observe them without being infected by them. You are the lighthouse. She is the storm. The storm can rage, the waves can crash, but the lighthouse stands firm, its light unwavering. Its purpose is to hold its ground, to be a point of stability in the chaos. If the lighthouse were to leap into the sea, it would be of no use to anyone. Your value to her and to the world is your steadfastness. By observing her emotions from a position of calm strength, you give them a safe space to exist without allowing them to destroy you both. You are the container. She is the chaotic energy within it. Your job is to hold the container steady. When you become as chaotic as she is, the container shatters. This pattern of decay is a virus. It did not confine itself to your romantic life. Look at your career. That boss who kept piling on urgent tasks at 5 o'clock on a Friday. You said yes every time, didn't you? You worked late, you sacrificed your own time, hoping your servitude would be mistaken for ambition. You were hunting for his validation. You made an emotional concession, trading your personal time for his fleeting approval. You lost control of your own frame, your own work-life boundary. You became emotionally dependent on his praise. And when you finally burned out and asked for help breaking the silence, you were seen not as a leader, but as a liability. The same disease, a different host. Look at your friendships. That one friend who always calls in a crisis, who needs your time, your money, your emotional support, but who vanishes the moment you need something in return. You kept giving, didn't you? You were afraid of the conflict that saying no would create. You conceded your resources to avoid a moment of emotional discomfort. You lost the frame of a balanced, reciprocal relationship. You became dependent on the feeling of being needed to validate the friendship. You are not his friend. You are his utility, a tool to be used and put away. The truth is brutal. Your fall from power was not an external attack. It was an internal collapse. It was a failure of the will. It happened in the silence of your own mind, in the hesitation before you said no, in the 1,000 yeses you uttered out of fear, not conviction. She didn't take your power. You handed it to her piece by piece. She tested you, and you failed. No one is coming to save you. There is no cavalry. There is no rescue mission. You are behind enemy lines, and the enemy is the weakness you have cultivated within yourself. This diagnosis is not a death sentence. It is a target list. Each phase of your failure is a weakness that must be turned into a fortress. The pain of this realization is not to be avoided. It is to be used. It is the fire in which a new kind of man is forged. Nietzsche's hammer is in your hand. The question is, do you have the will to start swinging? There is no going back for the weak. There is only the construction of the new. The man you were is dead, a casualty of a war you didn't know you were fighting. Do not mourn him. His sentimentality, his need for approval, his belief in a fairness that does not exist. These were the structural flaws that led to his collapse. You will not repair his ruins. You will scavenge them for raw material and build a fortress in their place. This is not a process of healing. Healing is for the herd. This is a process of tactical re-engineering. It is cold, it is methodical, and it is absolute. Your emotions are now liabilities to be managed, not guides to be followed. Your pain is fuel for the forge, nothing more. The path forward is governed by 3 supreme commands. Cut the excess, install silence, control the reaction. This is the blueprint for your resurrection. First, you will reinstall scarcity. This is the most critical and most difficult operation. It requires total discipline. You will disappear. Not with a dramatic announcement, not with a final, bitter text message, not with a passive-aggressive social media post. That is the theater of the weak, a final plea for attention. Your disappearance will be silent, abrupt, and total. You will become a ghost. You will sever all non-essential contact with her and the social circle that witnessed your execution. Block her number. Unfollow her on every platform. Do not look at her stories. Do not ask mutual friends about her. You will create a complete and total information vacuum. This act is not born of anger. It is a strategic maneuver of immense power. By vanishing without explanation, you seize control of the narrative. In the absence of information, the human mind creates stories. Your silence forces her, and them, to write the script. Are you with someone new? Did you move? Did you achieve some massive success you are too busy to share? Their uncertainty is your first victory. You are no longer the predictable, pleading man. You are a question mark. You are an absence that carries weight, not a presence that begs. During this period of strategic isolation, you will engage in the second command: install silence. This silence is both external and internal. Externally, it is your primary weapon. If contact is initiated by her or her proxies, and it will be once the vacuum you've created becomes uncomfortable for them, you will meet it with calculated indifference. The weak man sees a text message and feels an urgent need to reply. His validation-starved brain craves the hit. You will starve that part of your brain until it dies. A text from her is not a summons. It is a test of your frame. Let it sit for hours, even days. If you choose to respond, your reply will be a tool, not a conversation. It will be short, direct, and devoid of emotion. It will not answer her underlying question, "Do you still care?" And it will not ask any questions of your own. You are not seeking information. You are demonstrating control. Your silence communicates more than words ever could. It says, "My world no longer revolves around you. My time is valuable, and you do not have an automatic claim to it. I am the one who decides when and if this interaction proceeds." Do not reconquer. Replace with a sharper silence. Internally, you must cultivate a profound stillness. Your mind has been a chaotic battlefield of replayed humiliations and desperate fantasies of revenge. This ends now. You will meditate, not for peace, but for discipline. You will learn to observe your thoughts and emotions as a general observes troop movements on a map, with detached, strategic analysis. The surge of anger, the pang of loneliness, the whisper of hope, these are not you. They are data points. Acknowledge them, and then return your focus to the mission. Nietzsche wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." As well, the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. You must shed the skin of the man who was ruled by his feelings. The new man is the ruler of his inner state. This internal silence is the foundation of your new power. From this stillness comes the ability to execute the third command: control the reaction. You will become a master of the non-reaction. You will train yourself to receive any stimulus, a provocation, an insult, a piece of good news, with the same calm, unshakable center. This makes you unreadable. It makes you unpredictable. A man who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. This period of silence and scarcity is not passive. It is the most active and brutal phase of your reconstruction. You are not waiting. You are forging. You will redirect every ounce of energy you once wasted on her and your own weakness into 4 pillars of power. First, the physical. You will go to war with your body. You will treat the gym not as a place for health, but as a forge. Every repetition is an act of defiance. Every drop of sweat is a purification. You are not building a beach body. You are building armor. You are creating a physical presence that commands respect before you ever speak a word. Second, the financial. You will become obsessed with your purpose, your mission. Your career or business becomes your primary theater of operations. You will work with a singular, relentless focus. Money is not just currency, it is a tool of power. It buys freedom, it buys options, and it builds a wall between you and the mediocrity of the world. Third, the symbolic. You will acquire a skill that makes you dangerous, that sets you apart. Learn a language, master an instrument, become an expert in a complex field. This builds what Nietzsche called a pathos of distance, an undeniable sense of superiority that comes not from arrogance, but from genuine, hard-won competence. Fourth, the social. You will ruthlessly cut away all low-value connections. Your time is a non-renewable resource. You will invest it only in men who are on the same path, who are stronger, smarter, or more disciplined than you. You will build a new hierarchy around you, one that pulls you up, not drags you down. This is not a hope. It is a plan, a cold, logical sequence of actions. You are not trying to win her back. Let me be clear. That woman is a ghost to you now. She was a symptom of your weakness, and the cure required amputating the limb she had infected. Your goal is not to impress her. Your goal is to make the man she knew so utterly unrecognizable that he might as well be a different person, because he will be. The objective is to build a life so compelling, so filled with purpose and power, that her memory becomes an irrelevant footnote in a much greater story. The ultimate power move is not making her regret losing you. It is reaching a state where her opinion of you is as meaningless as the whisper of the wind. You will become the creator of your own values. You will be the source of your own validation. A man who wants to be loved will be discarded. A man who imposes his presence will be feared. And fear, my friend, is a much more stable foundation for respect than the shifting sands of affection. Before you take your next step, you will follow your next command. Subscribe to Psychological Dominion, activate all notifications, and strike the like button to signal your commitment to the Forge. This is your digital salute, your enlistment in this war. And in the comments, you will answer this with cold honesty. What is the one weakness you have been feeding? The one emotional indulgence you will now starve to death starting today? This is not a confession. This is a target declaration. We are building an army of men who refuse to be defined by their defeats. The day will come when you cross paths again. It is inevitable. It will be at some social gathering, some high-stakes event where the same audience that watched you fall is now present to witness your return. The old you would have felt a surge of anxiety, a desperate need to prove something. The new you will feel nothing but a cold, calm readiness. You will not seek her out. You will not avoid her. You will simply exist in your new reality. Your posture will be different. Your eyes will hold a steady, unnerving calm. You will move with a deliberateness that speaks of immense internal control. You will not need to speak of your accomplishments. Your presence will be a testament to them. When she sees you, she will not see the man she broke. She will see a stranger, a man who radiates a quiet, dangerous energy. A man whose silence is more intimidating than any shout he could ever utter. And in that moment, the power dynamic will not just shift, it will shatter. She will feel an overwhelming urge to regain your attention, to solve the puzzle of who you have become, and you will give her nothing. You will offer a polite, indifferent nod, and then you will turn your attention to something and someone more important. This is not revenge. Revenge is an emotional act, and you are beyond that. This is a statement of fact. It is the quiet, undeniable assertion of your new place in the world. You have not just climbed out of the abyss. You have become the abyss. A force of gravity so powerful that it bends the world around it. Your thirst for dominion is no longer a desire. It is your nature. The moment was never going to be an accident. You engineered it with the same cold precision you now applied to every facet of your existence. It was a gala, a charity auction, one of those grotesque spectacles where the herd gathers to display its social plumage and bid on things they don't need to prove, a worth they don't possess. The same room, the same faces, the same cloying scent of expensive perfume and quiet desperation. It was the perfect theater for the final act. You didn't enter. You materialized. There was no grand arrival, no announcement. One moment the space was filled with the meaningless chatter of the last man. The next, a pocket of silence formed around you. A gravitational anomaly. Your suit was not the most expensive, your watch not the most ostentatious. But the armor you wore underneath was forged in the fires of absolute self-possession, and it was visible to everyone. You moved with the economy of a predator. your gaze sweeping the room not with searching anxiety, but with the detached assessment of a king surveying his territory. And then she saw you. It was not a glance. It was a collision. For a brief, beautiful moment, the mask of her carefully constructed social grace shattered. You saw it all, the flicker of disbelief, the involuntary widening of her eyes, the subtle tensing of her jaw. She was looking at a ghost, but this was not the pathetic specter she had banished. This was something else entirely, a revenant. She saw a man whose shoulders were broader, not just from the gym, but from the weight of a purpose she could not comprehend. She saw eyes that did not seek hers for approval, but looked straight through her, as if she were a pane of glass separating him from something more interesting. The man she had dismantled was gone. In his place stood an architect. Her mind, conditioned to read the weaknesses in others, found no purchase. There were no cracks in the facade, no nervous tics, no tells. There was only a calm, unnerving stillness, a black hole of charisma. She was the one who was now invisible, a background character in a story that was suddenly, terrifyingly, all about you. She made a move, an almost imperceptible step in your direction, her social programming compelling her to close the circuit, to solve the unnerving puzzle you presented. The audience held its breath. They remembered the last time. They leaned in, hungry for the drama, for the completion of your humiliation, or the explosion of your revenge. And you gave them nothing. As she approached, you turned your head slightly. Your eyes met hers, for precisely 1 second. There was no anger, no pain, no recognition of a shared history. You gave her a nod. It was the nod you would give to a waiter who had filled your water glass, a polite, impersonal, utterly meaningless gesture of acknowledgement. And then, you turned away. You turned your back on her, on the audience, on the entire pathetic drama, and engaged the man next to you in a quiet conversation, your focus absolute. You did not dismiss her. The act was far more profound. You demonstrated, with a silence more deafening than any shout, that she did not exist in your reality. She was a variable that had been rendered null, a ghost in a room where you were the only living thing. Understand this. This was not revenge. Revenge is a transaction. It is an emotional payment that validates the original debt, admitting that the wound still exists. Revenge is the game of the weak, an attempt to balance a scale that should have been thrown into the fire. You did not flip the board to win their game. You walked away from the table, and in doing so, revealed that the game itself was a childish fantasy. They were all still playing with their little wooden soldiers, moving them around a checkered board, believing the contest mattered. You were building an empire in the real world. Nietzsche's Übermensch does not concern himself with the morality of sheep. He does not seek their applause or fear their condemnation. He is a creator of new values, a force that imposes its will on reality. You did not seek to be judged as good or bad by their standards ever again. You sought to be effective. You sought to be necessary. You sought to be a law unto yourself. The respect you now command was not requested. It was not earned through supplication or good deeds. It was imposed. It was imposed by your absence when they expected your presence. It was imposed by your silence when they expected your pleading. It was imposed by your cold, unshakable focus on your own mission when they expected you to be obsessed with them. Power is not a negotiation. It is a unilateral declaration of your own value. You became the source. You stopped being a reflection in their eyes and became the sun, a source of gravity so immense that their little worlds were forced to orbit you, whether they desired it or not. They do not have to like you. They do not have to approve of you. They simply have to contend with you. You have become a fact of life, an environmental condition they must navigate. This is true dominion. It is not about controlling others. It is about achieving a state of such absolute self-control that the actions and opinions of others become irrelevant static. Your legacy is not the memory of a man who recovered from humiliation. It is the legend of a man who used his own vivisection as the blueprint for a god. You took the pieces of the man they broke and you did not glue them back together. You melted them down in the forge of your will and cast a weapon. You are no longer a cautionary tale. You are the warning. You are the living embodiment of the truth that what is done out of contempt can create a monster far more powerful than the love of the herd can ever create a man. They wanted you to be invisible. Be careful what you wish for. The most dangerous force in the universe is not the one you can see coming. It is the quiet, patient, relentless gravity of the void that pulls everything into its orbit without making a sound. The war is never over. It is only beginning. Your subscription to psychological dominion is your oath of allegiance. Activate all notifications, for every dispatch is a weapon for your arsenal. Strike the like button as a final salute to the ghost you have left behind. And now, you will report for duty in the comments below. Answer this one question, and answer it with the cold clarity of your new reality. Now that you understand the strategy, what is the single greatest lie about power you were taught? And how will you weaponize the truth? Do not hesitate. The battlefield is waiting. Your silence is no longer a sign of weakness. It is the sound of your reign beginning.